Okay, so here's our two square cakes, our 9-inch square cakes put together. We've iced them, and we're not worried about the join down the middle here. You'll see why shortly. Obviously you could try and ice the whole cake, but as we're going to be covering that join anyway, it makes no difference, and it makes it a bit easier just to do the fondant icing in smaller pieces. So now what I'm going to do is we've got some red fondant rolled out, and we're just going to cut that down, and you'll see shortly what this is going to be for. So we've got our marzipan knife, and what we're going to do is, you can use a ruler if you want to, or just go freehand. What I'm going to do is cut a strip out that's long enough to go down the front and the back edge of the cake to begin with. So it's literally only probably half an inch or maybe even less than that. Just a long thin strip, like so. We'll move that to one side, and we'll create another one like that. Obviously, as your skills get a little bit better, it's easier to do this freehand than it is with a ruler, just a bit faster. And for things like this, you don't need perfection. And then one strip for either end of the cake, again the same size. Or the same width, should I say. So we can probably make the ends out of one strip here. So I'm just going to roll this fondant up and put that to one side. And what we're going to do is, if I just show you here, what we're going to do is we're going to take our cake, and along the front edge and around each side we're going to put our strip like so, and we're going to create the edge for our photo book. So this is going to be like a leather effect. So I'm just going to roughly trim that how I want it, and I'm taking it around the corner, and I'm going to put the join around the corner. So on both ends, I'm not actually just cutting straight there, I'm wrapping the fondant around the corner and then creating a straight edge going the opposite direction, and that's what we'll stick the other piece to. So what we need to do is we get our water and brush. We just shift this to one side a second, put a little bit of water down, just so that the fondant sticks to the board, and just a little thin layer around the bottom of the cake, just so it's got something to bond to. And then we can push these strips in like so, just making sure that we're nice and flush with the bottom edge of the cake. And then we can spin this round, and if I just move out a little bit, and we're going to do the same thing on this other side, but what I'm going to do here is just trim our bit of fondant in half with one of our strips, and what you'll see here is this edge where we've cut is in the direction that we want to go in, and what I'm going to do is, don't have to worry about it going over the edge here, that's fine, we can just wrap it around a little bit. We're going to put some water along the edge like so, put a little bit of water on our join, and then we can stick our fondant in like so. So again, you'll see in a minute, we don't have to be too precise here. We're just getting it to stick in place, and in a moment we'll add an effect to it so that we lose some of the flat fondant look here and create a bit of a level look for the edge of the album. So again, I'm just cutting, instead of cutting straight down in this direction, just taking the fondant around the corner and trimming off, and then we'll spin the cake around again. Obviously you need to be a bit careful when you move the board around, because you can get finger marks in the fondant. And I'm just going to do the same thing on this side. Bit of water on the join. And I'm just going to trim that edge straight. And just push those edges together. I'm not worried about losing the seam here. Just making sure it's flush with the edge. Taking it around the corner again. Trim off. And then on the last edge, got our shorter piece that we can put in. Exactly the same way. Bit of water on both ends. And this time we're just going to take it up slightly. We're quite close to the edge of this board here. Now we could have got a slightly larger board, but we'll work with what we've got. I'm just going to slightly wrap that around a little bit. You'll see that it won't matter too much in a moment. Just carefully push those edges together. And as we're right on the edge here, I just want to make sure that we've got some good contact with the fondant. And then what we can do before the fondant begins to set is we'll start on the front edge, the back edge should I say, and just with our marzipan knife, we'll try this side first of all. We just create little indentations. You don't want to go too deep, just around the edge. And don't be too precise here. Go too far, you can just push it back down again. Just want to create a little indentation. Just turn that around the other way around. And the other thing you can use, which might be even better, is our little fondant tool here. And I'm just going to create a light edge here. Light indentation. I'll show you this close up in a second so you can see the effect. So if I zoom in a little bit now, you'll see we've got our effect around the cake. We've gone around, you can see we're starting to get the basis for our book cake, and we'll now start on the next bit. And for this part, what we're going to do is we're going to create some pages on our book. So I'm going to pause the video and I'll show you that. Okay, so I've placed the cake onto a cake turntable. Just makes it a bit easier to move around, so it's well worth the investment. And so it enables us to get around the cake nice and easily. Okay, so what we're going to do is take our knife. We're not going to be cutting here. We're just going to be using our knife to mark the edge of the fondant, and you'll see you'll begin to get an effect like pages on a book. So just come down at eye level, and we'll start at the bottom just so we can get used to it. And what you can do to begin with is use the edge of the board to guide yourself along. So put your middle finger on the edge of the board and then carefully glide yourself along. As you go up the cake, that gets a little bit harder obviously, but you can still sort of use the board to carefully move along the cake. So I'm just going to start here. This is the back edge. So if this is the first time you're doing it, you can just get into the routine by just working from the back first of all, as that's the part of the cake that isn't going to be as visible. Now you don't want to be cutting, like I say, you just want a visible line. So don't be too shy about, the line's got to be deep enough to see. So you need to go in a millimetre or two into the icing, depending on how thick your icing is, obviously. And then we can just carefully move up. Now, the thinner you can do this, obviously makes it look like there's more pages in the book. But if your eye's not so good or your hand's not so steady, you can widen these out a little bit without any problem. So I'll just work our way up the cake. Obviously you want to make sure that you get roughly the same thickness all the way along, i.e. the gap between the lines, because otherwise you'll end up with, by the time you get to the top, it'll be all uneven and it won't look good. So as I get to the top, you'll see that I'm deliberately just doing the lines on the left hand side to begin with, and the reason for that is that I want to get the effect of the pages sort of dropping slightly here on the left hand side. So if I move the line up at an angle slightly, I'll get the rounded effect that I'm looking for, and then I can just repeat on the other side. Like so. So that's that side, and if I just zoom in a little bit, you can see it's beginning to take shape. So all I'm going to do then is turn around, and working from the lines on the back, I'm going to bring the lines around